Hi, this is Andrew Twidwell, owner of ABT Plumbing, Electric, Heat, and Air. Once again with the show You Got This. It's a show of DIY do's and don'ts. I'm sitting here in our Auburn office with Mr. Dan Foss, who runs our drain cleaning division, and Miss Rosalie Brown in LA, who is our producer and marketing extraordinaire. So yeah, we're here. We were just talking about the weather changes. I know my furnace didn't work this morning, so that was really fun. I spent an hour trying to fix the furnace and still was unable to fix the furnace. And somehow, I guess it stopped working late last night because the house was really cold. So it was down to 46 degrees this morning. So yeah, that's what I get to look forward to this afternoon, is trying to get that furnace going. How are you doing with this weather? It's like all of a sudden, oh, it's wintertime now. Bam.
For me, it wasn't the weather as much as I went to go get into the truck,
Your truck.
and the fob wouldn't turn off the alarm. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I opened up the door with the key, opened it up in the middle of the morning, beep, beep, beep. And so I'm like, I couldn't shut the stupid thing off. And so I was like, crap, now I got to take my own truck to work. So I go switch keys to get into my truck to get to work on time, and turn it, and it goes click, 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 because it's been sitting a while. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding. The cold isn't good for the batteries.
Nope.
And so there I am in my car while the other car is going off, trying to get the key or the battery out of my fob for my truck into the battery change the batteries
For
of the
the
two
work truck.
fobs.
Yeah.
Stealing from Peter to pay Paul type thing, and finally got the alarm to shut off and got in the truck and got to work. And literally, I was still I think 2 minutes early. So hey, so it could have been worse, but
It's been fun, this weather change. How about you, Rosalie? In lovely LA, I don't think you've experienced much in the way of cold yet.
False. It
false.
is 62 degrees right now, so we're warmed up from the 40s.
Oh, it was in the 40s this morning. All right, so
Yeah,
it's chilly.
so I mean, and it got cold last night. We have the Santa Ana winds, and sometimes that doesn't mean anything, but when it's cold, you feel
Oh yeah,
them.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
we had
that
some
that's
with some
cold coming
action.
in. Yeah,
I remember those Santa Ana winds. It was
yeah.
I'll tell you
it
what
was the
they
one
do
time
for
you
you.
Girl mountains. You're like, oh, there's actually a mountain right there that I couldn't see
Well, I
most
will
of the year.
I will say this, that yes, the air is clearer, right? But also all the pollen and whatever else is like, I mean, so it's kind of a love-hate thing right now. Like super drippy, lots of sinus pressure. But we're all here. And I did want to suggest maybe you and your wife might want to make some cookies for your neighbors, because when you're the guy on the street that has all their alarms going off first thing in the morning, you're not their friend.
Yeah, not making
Yeah,
friends. And you live in Alta Sierra, right?
yeah. I live in Alta Sierra.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you got
I got a
neighbors.
lot of neighbors on a cul-de-sac, so it's everybody's like real kind of tight right there. And
It's not like you're out on 10
on
acres.
the flip side, they don't get too mad at me because I don't know how many times I had somebody knock on the door. Hey Dan, and as soon as I open the door, I look at them and go, "Okay, what'd you break?"
Right.
Because the one time they call me or whatever, it's like friends I haven't talked to in years.
Right.
All of a sudden they call me and then they're, hey Jared, hey man, what'd you break?
Yeah.
And so I get to go over there and help them out, but that's part of being what a neighbor is, I guess.
Ironically, I've got a friend who's a doctor, and we commiserate with one another about that. It's like you get asked how to fix things, and he gets asked all the time, like, I've got this pain. I'm like, I get the same kind of thing. And it's weird how it kind of like, I mean, obviously they're completely different, but just the idea that, we kind of parallel each other when, friends need things done, have questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Question: you are hosting a show that's called DIY Do's and Don'ts. So
Yes.
I actually think if people are coming to you, that's actually a good thing.
It's a good thing. And actually we talk about it, and he's like, it doesn't bother Joel, and it doesn't bother Dr. Check, whatever. It doesn't bother me either. But it's just interesting that's kind of the dynamic that you have that happens, right?
Well, my wife's sensitive about it. She goes, "Really? What kind of a friend are they if the only time they call you is when they broke something?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, honey, they've got busy lives too,
Right.
and when was the last time you always call up all your friends just to
Right.
say hello?" And I try to, but
And some of us are a little socially awkward, so we may not be reaching out to our friends as much as we should.
they were at least they remembered me when they had a problem, I guess.
It kind of sounds a little bit like parenting adult children. Like when my phone rings and it's that one child, I already know. something's
Right.
wrong, because I don't get the like, hey mom, what's going on phone call. I get the,
It's doing great.
you're not going to believe this, and it's some crisis and you're like, oh, it's so early for this. What's going on?
Crisis for money, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Totally. All right. So this weather. So yeah, we're kind of rolling into winter. We're still in fall, but things are getting cold. So we thought we'd kind of segue. Well, I'm just going to segue this in there. Things are a little chilly, so we're going to be talking about winter stuff and the interesting things that happen in one's home during this time of year. Because as the weather changes, things change in our house. Different things are going to start breaking. Different things are going to start happening. And one thing that one of our Dee Dee brought up, our HVAC comfort advisor brought up, was how many pests you see this time of year in people's homes. Because all those mammals that are outside, and even the insects and reptiles and amphibians are looking for a warmer place than outside. So they will, scurry into little nooks and crannies and find places to kind of stay warm. And unfortunately, some of the pests that work their way into your house, mainly like, larger mammals like mice. Well, I guess that's not a larger mammal, but a mouse, a rat, a raccoon, squirrels, cats, feral cats. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things, skunks, and some of our customers up in the higher country, bear climbing underneath their house and stuff like that. So there can be a lot of things that are trying to find a warmer place to hang out. But unfortunately, while they're doing that, some of them do a lot of damage. And I know, like I can't tell you how many times I've had to replace drain lines because rodents have eaten through them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people are like, well, or water lines. And the first question I get from people is like, well, should I change to a metal pipe, be it a copper water line or a cast iron drain? And I'm like, no, it's not really a plumbing issue per se. It's more of a pest issue. You really need to get rid of the pests, because whether they find water in the water lines or the sewer lines, they also might be looking for electrical lines, because we've also seen rodents eat into electrical lines.
Usually only once.
Yeah. Yeah.
After that, they're well done.
Yeah. And actually, I've had multiple occasions where I've opened pressure switches on wells that weren't functioning to find a rodent that's crawled up inside the pressure switches, which is a little switch that, it's 220. And when that sucker turns on, there's a nice big spark. That thing arcs up. And it fries rodents when they climb in there.
Yeah, I've seen one that was full of ants, and it did the same thing. bunch of dead ants in there, and yeah.
And that was something weird, because I know that's something that people don't really think about. But ants, for some reason, like I guess it's like an electromagnetic thing. I've never really done any research on it, but I've had the similar situation. We had our son was staying in our guest house, and we had a hardwired smoke detector, and the ants found the hardwired smoke detector above his bed and were dropping from the ceiling into his bed. And I opened it up, and there was thousands of ants inside this thing. And I've also seen it in GFCIs. We've seen it in pressure switches. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, and again, this is not an electrical issue. This is
breaker panels
pest issue. Yes. So
the mud daubers in there. Oh my gosh, I've seen that.
So, if you, during this period of time, it's a good idea to search around the perimeter of your house to see if you've got the gaps and holes that they can get into. And I've got one friend who's a pest control guy, and he reminded me that a mouse only needs a hole the size of a dime to get into, literally a dime. Mm-hmm. So, you're not even talking a full inch. You're talking about half an inch in diameter. It doesn't take much, and doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly round. If you've got a crack that's got a section in it that's about a half an inch, they can, as long as they can get their head through it, they can get their body through it. A rat the size of a quarter. So again, barely an inch. And, you see this rat that's, from head to toe or to tail is a foot long or more, and they're getting through a hole the size of a quarter. So take a walk around your house and look for those little gaps that you may find. And cover them up. Either you got a couple ways of covering up. You can simply spray some foam in there. They can eat through foam. You can even use duct tape to slow them down, but they will go through duct tape. You can use steel wool.
Yeah, that's what I was just.
Steel wool. They that's an easy way to deal with it. You just go to the hardware store, go to B&C or Hills Flat, and pick up steel wool that doesn't have any. Don't buy the SOS pads that's already got the soap in it. Just get the non-soap steel wool and take a screwdriver and shove that steel wool in there.
If you get the stuff with the soap in it, though, at least they're brushing their teeth while they're
as they chew on
as
it.
they chew on it. Anyway.
And if you want to go a step further, you can use like a wire mesh. If you got larger holes, use a wire mesh. And when you're using wire mesh, you want to make sure that it's, you don't want to use chicken wire because that's big enough for a rat to get through. You don't even want to, you want to get down to about 1/4 or 1/8 inch mesh. So you almost want to use a metal screen when you're trying to cover up these holes. And I actually had a problem in our place in Grass Valley where the rodent was digging underneath. We had a section of our house that we live in a really old house. It was built in the 30s and kind of extended and expanded on. So a section of the house, the foundation was subterranean. It was below grade. And there was a vent that was right at grade. And they would dig underneath and get underneath the vent and get underneath the siding and crawl up and through that way. And it took me a while to figure that one out. So I literally had to I dug that area out, put in wire mesh and heavy rocks, and that's got rid of the problem. But we had rats in our house.
I've had them in my attic, and I was like, how the heck did they get in here? And finally found a hole in the side of our second garage. So they'd come in there, go through 2 garages, go all the way up, and then followed wires through the drywall, which I saw that they had opened up and made the hole bigger.
Yeah.
And they were getting into the attic there. And the thing with rats and mice, their teeth keep growing.
Yeah.
So they have to chew on stuff all the time to keep their teeth at the right length. And so they'll find your wiring. So then now you're not just talking about frying a animal. I mean, if it's up in your attic, they can start a fire.
Yeah.
And chewing on your water lines, causing water damage and everything else. Which, by the way, just for those of you guys that don't know this, they do make a device that you can put on your water line, and what it'll do is it'll sense a leak. And if it's running too long, and there's different parameters, things like that, but it will shut the water off to your whole house. And insurance companies are starting to require these.
Yeah.
And it'll shut the water off to your whole house and, help protect the home from gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of water damage and everything else.
And it's not a new product. I mean, I remember a rep showing us the product 30 years ago when I was in San Francisco. So it's been around a long time. It's just that it's
becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, people are really slow to do it because it's like I've had people that have installed them after the fact because they've gone through the trauma of having their whole house flooded and then they don't want to have that happen again. It's very rare that I've had somebody say, yeah, install one of these things. But it is great insurance to make sure that you don't have this kind of floods.
Literally, this customer had the insurance company say that they wanted it installed to be able to insure them.
Wow.
So I think what's going to happen is
that might happen more and more often.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it might not hurt to contact your homeowner insurance too and see if you can get a deduction on your homeowner insurance because it might actually pay for it, the installation of one of these things over the course of 3 to 5 years or something like that.
Could be.
So it's great. It's great insurance. Those things, and they work great. So if you do have a rodent that puts a hole in your water line and starts to flood your house, the water will actually stop running. And I know, with AI, I know they've got. I think the Moen one has.
It's Wi-Fi accessible, so it actually alerts you on your phone, and
it's learning. Yeah. So it learns the course of the day, throughout the course of the day, what you're using.
Pattern.
So it's not going to shut your water off because you're running your tub or your jacuzzi tub or something like that. It'll start figuring out what's excessive and what's not excessive. So there's some cool products out there for avoiding it. But so definitely take a look around the perimeter of your house and just keep the rodents out, keep the insects out. I know some people don't like to spray. I'm a sprayer. I would spray poison around the perimeter of my house because I didn't like having black widows around my children. That freaked me out. And my wife freaks out with spiders. So that was kind of one of those things. So it's not a bad idea, even this time of year, to start, do your quarterly spray if you don't have a pest control company that comes out and takes care of that for you.
The other thing is got to watch out where they nest, because I've seen times where they've nested around water heaters and the side vents of the water heater. Because who often do you go out to look at your water heater?
Yeah.
And they nested around the side vents of the water heater, which clogged off the air intake, which ruined the water heater.
Yeah.
But then on top of it, where it was a simple fix, it just needs to be cleaned up and make sure that those air vents are open at the base of that water heater to allow air to come in and have proper combustion. And of course, by incomplete combustion, then you can also have carbon monoxide issues and everything else. So
and carbon buildup, and it will actually clog the flue chamber with carbon. And well, that's a good segue. I'm just gonna use that as a segue. So
I was trying. Oh, you didn't have to tell everybody we were doing that, but I was trying. But go ahead. Here's a segue, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I'm a little slow, so I gotta speak this out. I gotta talk this thing through, right? So we do have these incredible specials going on. So we will come out and do a whole house plumbing house inspection plus a water heater flush for only $49. And that you can reach us at 530-230-9092 for that. We also come out and check your furnace, because that was something else I was going to talk about. Rodents. Can't tell you how many times we've seen rodents inside of ductwork. And that's really freaking nasty, because once they're in there, rodents don't use a toilet. They just kind of go wherever they want to go. Wherever they are is where they go. And so when you turn that furnace on and you've got rodents inside your ducts, you're getting all that lovely poop particles and urine particles that come up through the vents from said rodents inside, plus the fact that you got a hole in your system that now all of a sudden you're heating your crawl space or your attic, where instead of the heat's going there instead of going into your house. So it's not a bad idea to have a furnace tune-up and furnace inspection.
And have the ducts inspected. Yeah.
And we'll make sure the thing is actually working like it's supposed to. And again, 530-230-9092, and that's $49 as well. So, and then electrical, because we've also had situations where we've gone out and inspected people's homes. We had one home that had a rodent issue and had multiple, we're talking 10 or 20 sections where rodents had chewed through the wire and had bare wire exposed. And we literally, the only thing we could do at that point, we're like, we could do that one and that one and that one, but what is happening behind the walls that we can't see? How many other situations do you have that we can't see? And our suggestion then was just rewire the whole house. And we ended up literally rewiring the whole home because of rodents. And that's not cheap.
No.
Once the house is built and now we're opening walls and having to rewire everything, it was not an inexpensive problem.
It was cheaper than rebuilding a burnt down house, though.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. And life insurance and such. Yeah. So pests can be really bad. So definitely take a look around your house and make sure that it actually is, devoid of any holes or any way for pests to get in.
I think the pest prevention is keeping it from happening to begin with.
Yeah, and it literally is just a matter of walking around the perimeter of your house and looking for holes. And I did that at one point, and then I had this pest guy come out that I know, and he caught two that I missed and fixed them for me. And I thought I knew what I was doing, but the whole dime thing, that's really tiny. And he's like, yeah, a mouse can get through that. So that was kind of a learning experience for me. Again, with this cold weather, this is something we've talked about in the past, but we see an uptick in, actually it's not cold weather, but because of the fact that we've come through relatively dry summer, and fortunately it wasn't that dry this summer, but roots will try to find their way into sewer lines. And we typically see that in the fall, more so in the summer, because the roots have had a chance to grow bigger. And if you have a broken sewer line, and let me phrase this really carefully. If you have a sewer line that is not broken, roots will not find their way in. If you have a broken sewer line, roots will find their way in. And again, for graphic purposes, a root can find a hole the size, the diameter of a hair. That's all it needs to find its way into the sewer line. Once it's inside there, now all of a sudden it's got water, it's got nitrogen, it's got fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So it's going to grow really rapidly. So once it's got that little hair root that's gotten into the sewer line and then it's found the water column at the bottom of the base of the pipe, it'll just start growing and it will expand. So we live in the Sierras. You've seen the trees that have separated rocks, granite boulders, right? Same thing occurs within our sewer lines. It will literally start to open that gap, open that hole bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you've got really old tile lines, ceramic pipe, which we stopped installing for the most part for laterals back in the 60s, I think, right? 50s or 60s?
How old do you think I am?
Yeah, it's before your time. I was still using lead and open, so yeah, an old cast iron hub pipe. That just dates me. So it's been a long time since we used them. So those pipes are generally, close to 100 years old, 80 to 100 years old. But in any event, there's still a lot of them out there. Once the roots get in there, it starts to open the pipe and it starts to get the hole bigger and bigger and bigger, and will literally collapse the pipe. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that with old tile pipes.
And the reality is if you have a situation like that, people say, well, when it collapses, I'll get it fixed. A lot of times it can be more expensive to fix a collapsed pipe than to fix a broken pipe, because we have the ability to do trenches technology, things like that. But if the pipe is totally collapsed, there's no other way to fix it except to actually dig it up.
Yeah.
And so there's ways to sometimes fix it without literally digging up the whole line and do a whole line replacement underground. So if you ever have questions like that, give us a call. We'd be happy to give you some options there.
Yeah, and if you've had a sewer line that has been backing up, every 6 months to a year, and you keep calling somebody out there to clear it and they're pulling roots up, you got a broken sewer line. If they've given you a quote to fix it, give us a call. We can come out there and give you a second opinion. There might be other options to that problem. We do a lot of spot repairs and things. Sometimes it's just a matter of fixing one section as opposed to replacing the entire pipe.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we got? So we got time for maybe one more. Let's go with water heaters. What happens this time of year with water heaters?
Well, water heaters, when the water's coming into it, it's oftentimes colder, especially if you're on a well, and which makes your water heater work harder. And we always joke around in the industry, it's not a hot water heater, it's a water heater. It doesn't heat hot water. It takes cold water and makes it hot. So it's actually a water heater. Anyway, but your water heater works harder.
Yeah.
And as it works harder, it can be obviously less efficient. And any number of things can happen. It causes more expansion and contraction, which will allow the water heater to fail.
That's the key right there. So water heater is a really violent place. A gas water heater particularly is an incredibly violent environment. We pour cold water through a tube that goes to the bottom of the water heater. There's a dip tube inside of that thing. And the water stratifies, right? The hot water will rise to the top and cold water sinks to the bottom. And then we put this fire on the bottom of it. Really hot fire, 40,000 BTUs of flame that boils, that heats that water up really hot. And when you're taking 40-degree water and heating it to 120 degrees, there's a lot of expansion that happens there. Yep. And we'll literally put strain and stress on that steel glass-lined water heater. And it's glass-lined in the sense that, it's a glaze that's fired in a kiln, and it literally is covered in this glaze inside of there. That stuff, once it cracks, it has no memory. It doesn't go back. Once it's expanded, it doesn't go back. So now all of a sudden you have fissures inside the liner that gets to the steel and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so
water, steel equals rust.
So we have a lot of problems. So anyway, wintertime does a lot of damage to our systems, and it looks like we're out of time. So we're going to run through this really once again. So we have these incredible deals. Water heater flush, electrical inspection, $97 drain clean for any residential house with an accessible drain, and electrical home inspection, all for $49. You can reach us at 530-230-9092, 530-230-9092. Find us on the web at abtplumbing.com or as easy as ABT, and like us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thanks. Catch you later.
Bye.